now to introduce you to our final plenary for this year's annual meeting, which I hope will provide you with real singular inspiration to nourish each of you and for you to share in your work, your home, and your community. So I'm very pleased to introduce to you Swill Canham, who will join us for a performance titled The Qualitative Expression of Being. I had the great pleasure of attending one of Swill Canham's performances, and I can tell you, you're in for a real treat. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Swill Canham, who is a Lummi storyteller, actor, and classically trained violinist and composer. He's also a U.S. Army veteran. He is widely recognized for enchanting audiences with original composition music and native storytelling. He's received many awards and accolades for his work and performs extensively across the country. To highlight just a few, he's been a featured performer at the American Indian Film Awards in San Francisco since 2003 and performed at the Smithsonian's Museum of the American Indian and during the Dalai Lama's visit to Seattle in 2008, among others. He's also a board member of the Seattle Symphony. He has been sought after as a keynote speaker for conferences on mental health in healthcare spaces, and he passionately encourages and inspires people of all walks of life to honor their authentic vision and follow their passion. So please join me in giving a very warm welcome to the spectacular Swill Canham.
Before I get started, I want to ask, is there anyone here who has not seen me perform before? If you could please just rate. All right, I gotta start from the beginning. I'm from the Lummi tribe near Bellingham, Washington. I like to introduce myself with a short story. In the Lummi tradition, a short story is a story that is less than 3 days long. And it goes like this. A long time ago, there was a tree. A big tree. No, we're talking a huge tree that was once an itty-bitty little seedling. It survived that first winter. It learned how to bend with the wind. Seasons would come and go, years would go by. Eventually, children would play underneath the tree, and they'd grow up, and their children would play underneath the tree, and they'd grow up, and their children would play underneath the tree. Little itty-bitty songbirds built purty little nests in the highest branches of the tree so they could peek over the edge of the nest and sing their purty little songbird songs. And they went something like this. Chirp! Chirp! Squirrels would run up and down the tree for no apparent reason. Someone put a swing on a branch so everyone could feel the summer breeze right along with that tree. Until one winter, the northeaster was just too much and the tree fell. A woman walked by. Her name is Dorothy Smith. She looked at that tree and she said, "You know, I think there's a violin inside that tree." So with her magic hands, she reached inside the tree and she pulled a violin out, because that is what she was created to be, a violin maker. She made violins to be played at sacred moments and special places like this. What makes this a sacred moment? What makes this a special place? It's your choice and my choice. For how could I hope for a sacred life if I can't hold a single moment as sacred? How can I love all of creation if I forget about the trees all around us, holding the sky up for us? Now, the rest of that tree, it made toilet paper. This is the tree that Dorothy Smith found for you and for me. If you look at it closely, you can see that there are lines in the grain of the wood. Every line in the grain of wood is a symbol of a winter survived. You see, even trees make their mark during the toughest of times. Even trees make their mark during the toughest of times. That's what I sounded like when I first started. My foster parents, they were like, son, please practice. Practice, practice, practice. Just don't practice while we are home. I tell this story because I believe that honor is in the spirit of a complete communication, the whole story. Not just a story that's told from the beginning until the end, but rather a story that's told from a diversity perspective. My name is Richard Marshall, but that is just my name. Who I am, my identity, is Swilcanum. That's my Lummi name. Now, some would say that I'm part Nooksack, part Upper Skagit, part Samish, part Swinomish. I don't know what part of me is which. I guess that means that I am everyone I am, not part anyone. That I'm all of my stories, told and untold. Like in the spirit of We the People, we are everyone we are, not part anyone. In the spirit of We the People, we are all of our stories, told and untold. 1983, Native Americans met at the University of Lethbridge to address substance abuse on reserves and reservations throughout North America. They looked at all the causes and effects. And after doing that, they concluded this one thing: the hurt of one is the hurt of all, and the honor of one is the honor of all. The moment I heard that phrase, I was going through a tough time. I heard that phrase, it instantly clicked for me. What if? What if I honor the skills, gifts, and talents that got me through the most difficult times? and I share those skills, gifts, and talents with other people. Maybe they might be inspired to do the same with their life. And then so on and so on. And it occurred to me, the honor of one, honoring myself, honored everyone. This is a piece I wrote about that notion. It's called The Honor of All. Thank you. Thank you. I just want you to know I'm a violinist. I'm not used to woohoos. So, the polite claps were appreciated. But the woohoos, I'm sorry, it just makes me a little bit nervous. I'm afraid there's going to be stage diving, and then we got to stop that. I remember the day I decided to end my life. I was on the Aurora Bridge, and I was looking over the edge, and I thought, I don't want to jump there, that's someone's business or home or something down there. I felt like I didn't want to ruin their sense of home. So I kept walking down until I was over the water of Lake Union, and that seemed poetic to me, to live my life and come down to that full circle of ending my life in Union. And across that was where I was, the Lake Union was University of Washington, where I was born. I was born a Husky because my mom was working the streets, not very healthy when she was with me. Her treatment for that, what she was going through, was an oxygen tent. So I was kind of spared the fetal alcohol syndrome because she spent almost the entire pregnancy in an oxygen tent. I looked at Lake Union, the sun was setting behind me, and I noticed the water was making shapes from boats passing each other, and the waves would create what I saw with my own eyes was the notion of like ovoid artwork, this like the vest I'm wearing and the back design, where the waves were coming together and creating artwork. And in my mind, I saw hands reaching up to me. And I thought, my ancestors? They're going to greet me? Years later, I thought maybe they were pushing me back up on the bridge. But either way, I saw that artwork in that. And then I thought, there's no way anybody's going to know this. Except for me. This was my moment. I took off my coat, I laid it on the sidewalk. I still don't really understand why I took off my coat. Maybe it was a nice coat, somebody could use it, or the other motive was that I didn't want anything to slow me down going through. I did do that, and right as I did that, there was a red Subaru station wagon. Someone on the passenger side of a red Subaru station wagon rolled down the window. And because I was slowing up traffic, they were kind of angry. And they said, "Go ahead and effing jump." And I was like, who does that? That guy's sick. Somebody has to do something about that guy. So the next day at my emergency therapy session, I'm sitting with my therapist and I'm telling him the whole story. I was going to end my life on the Aurora Bridge. I had a plan, and it was really good. And this guy driving by says, "Go ahead and effing jump." And I told him, "We got to do something about this." And he said, "What?" And I said, "We got to do something about this guy in a red Subaru station wagon. And I'm willing to set up patrols and take down the license plates of red Subaru." I had a plan. And he said, "Get out of my office. I don't ever want to talk to you again." I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Didn't you hear what I said?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I heard what you said." We'd been together for a while. We weren't really getting anywhere. And then he said, "I heard you were in your darkest hour." Yes. Well, if in your darkest hour you can think about the well-being of someone else, you're on your own path to healing. I can't help you. I was being fired by my therapist. So I went and got another therapist. Only this time, I was going to qualify my therapist. So I had lots of interviews, intake interviews. And I sit down with them, and the first thing I'd say before we start talking, I want to ask you one question. Can you give me one healthy thought? And most therapists, being good therapists, would say, if I had a good thought or a healthy thought, what would that be? See, like try to flip it back on me, right? And that just pissed me off. And I didn't trust them. till I came across Gordon Oates. He was a therapist on the Lummi Indian Reservation. Now, just to be clear, patient-client privilege only goes one way. I can talk about him all I want, right? I checked with my lawyer. He told me that. So Gordon Oates was sitting there, and he had his notepad, yellow. I don't know why so many people have these yellow notepads, and he had a red pen just like everybody else. And he's sitting there, and he goes, okay, so what are we going to talk about this week? And I said, I don't want to wake that sleeping dog. And then he goes, okay, what do you want to, I was like, well, I want to know, do you have one healthy thought? And he goes, why? And I said, well, I've been asking therapists, and I just want one healthy thought. Can you give me one healthy thought? And he said, let me think on it. I said, all right. So I sat there and I watched him. Now, he'd write something down, and then he'd look at it, and then he'd think about it. And then he'd scribble it out. I said, what'd you scribble out? I wanted to know what he scribbled out, let alone, so he wrote another thought. And then he scribbled that out. I was engaged. I was sitting on the edge of my seat waiting. And then he wrote it out. I have it. What is it? And he goes, I am who I am. And I was like, dude, you're good. Because if you're who you are, then you're not trying to make me be something else. You can be who you are, and I can be who I am. He goes, yeah. I was like, wow, that's good. That's worth all the therapy I've had before. I mean, that's making everything make sense now. And he goes, yeah, you are who you are, I am who I am. So let's get started. I said, what do you mean? He goes, let's start. You said you don't want to wake that sleeping dog. So he was taking notes. And I said, yeah. And he goes, tell me about the dog. I said, what do you want to know about the dog? It's sleeping. Like what? He goes, where's the dog sleeping? On my grandma's rug, in my mind, like by a fireplace. What do you mean grandma's rug? You know those rag rugs that go out in a circle and they get bigger and bigger? She had one of those that she made, actually, and it's sitting next to the fireplace, and the dog's sleeping on that rug. He goes, and then what would you do? I said, I wouldn't wake it. He goes, well, tell me, if you were going to wake it, how would you wake it? And I said, I don't know. I'll put my hand next to its nose. And when it smells me, and I see the tail starting to wag, I'll scratch it behind the ear. And then we'll go outside and we'll play. He goes, so what would be wrong with waking that sleeping dog? And so I did. I started speaking painful truths. Things that I thought if I just mentioned, I would spontaneously combust. Changed my life. Everything about me changed in that moment. He said, okay, time's up. And I said, what do you mean time's up? I was like, we just got started. And he said, oh, I know, we just got started. And then he said, I'll see you next week. I couldn't wait till next week. I don't think I've ever left a therapy session not waiting, excited about the next therapy session. I was fully engaged. I stepped outside, it was like the whole world was moving slower. It was the coolest thing. My mind saw things differently. On the top step, I stepped outside, and it was like the trees were bending in the wind, slower. The birds flying from tree to tree were flying slower. The bus I was missing was driving by real slow, and I didn't care. I'll wait, I'll catch the next one. It was the most amazing experience. I want to share that feeling with you. This is the piece I wrote called Waking That Sleeping Dog. It's about the joy of telling the truth. Thank you. Ooh, ahs I can handle. Yes, that's good. I was raised in privilege, lots of privilege. My foster parents, my adoptive parents, they could afford a violin. They could afford certain things. Lessons, supporting my best efforts. But they had this belief that I came from a primitive culture and treated me as such. I lived in the basement. I wasn't allowed to come upstairs unless I was invited. They told me what I could or couldn't do, what I could or couldn't accomplish. They didn't think that I could play the violin. My fourth grade teacher, Kathy Dorr, my hero, she forged the parent permission slip, which allowed me to play a school instrument at school, and had an argument with them about me playing the violin. And that allowed for me to tap into something. When I aged out of the system and reconnected with my tribe, one of the first things I realized was that the hand drum was not a primitive instrument. It was actually a very powerful tool for me. You see, I hold the hand drum with my left hand because it's near my heartbeat. And I hold the drum stick with my right hand because I have only so many hands. The left hand is actually, someone way smarter than me figured this out. The left hand is actually controlled by my right brain. My right hand is actually controlled by my left brain. And in the anticipation of a powwow, in the anticipation of it coming together, I activate my frontal vortex. I'm already getting a little bit excited about this possibility of being fully integrated. My height, my depth, my width, all here in a moment. That soft beat that celebrates the heartbeat of Mother Earth. Oh, it fills my soul. This primitive instrument is complex. This primitive instrument is a technology that connects me to this moment, this right now. This primitive instrument is a time traveler. It connects me to my elders and my ancestors. And their relationship to right now. It connects me to my children and their children and their future children. It connects me to the future right now. My entire nervous system is actuated. I feel the moment. I feel the transformation within me, the healing, that I'm a part of the whole, that I belong in this moment. Honestly, I was intimidated by your intelligence, by your abilities, by your understanding. But right now, I want you to know I see you. I see you seeing me. I see that my sharing my story is significant to you. And that helps me to recognize, recognize, to recognize that we're in this journey together. It helps me to celebrate the brilliance of my ancestors, that they knew and they now know, that I may never know how amazing they were. Haishka, family, friends of family, thank you for being here. That's how we start almost all of our gatherings. They'd say things like, "Not siem, not chalaka siem, haishka, siem." Siem is a word used to describe someone held in high esteem. One way to see someone as a CM, is someone that you would let in your canoe. You don't just let anyone in your canoe. I mean, the paddle, it's for getting you there, but it's also for poking away the people you don't want in your canoe, right? It's an important thing to have a good paddle. So you don't let anybody in your canoe. Who do you let? You let someone who wants to go where you want to go. Someone who's been maybe where you've been. Someone who's going to work with you, pull the canoe with you. A CM is held in high esteem. What happens when you don't want you in the canoe? What happens when you don't see yourself as your own friend? It might take another canoe, someone on the outside saying, "Hey, don't go that way. There's rocks over there. Come this way." That's another kind of CM. A CM who might be there to help a young canoe puller. An Oksala CM. It's the highest esteem. It's to be there for the young ones. I don't know why I'm telling you this story. I don't know why I'm sharing this with you. I believe that every culture has a transformation story. It's magic. Now, you may not believe me, but of all my talents, I'm also an amateur magician. It's magic. So I'm going to do a little trick for you, magic for you. See, that's the amateur side of it, right? Okay, here's the magic. Watch closely. See this finger? Okay. 1, 2, 3. I know. See? Wait, it gets better. It gets better. Wait. 1, 2, 3. So now, I'm an amateur, so I'm going to tell you how I did it, right? Like real magicians, they have this code and all this kind of stuff, but since I'm an amateur, what happens is that when this finger gets close to this hand, this finger goes down real quick, really fast like, and then this finger pops up, right? See, and then I did it again, and it was like, it was like, that's like the fun thing, it's magic, right? Now, here's the real magic behind this trick, or this magic, is that this finger is actually attached to this hand, this arm, this heart, this mind, this arm, this hand, and this finger. Magic happens when we recognize and acknowledge that we're a part of the whole. Your whole life story, everything that you have overcome to come into this room, contributes to my well-being. To be honored, to be flown all the way across the country, to share my stories and my music with you, tells me that everything I've overcome has revealed a skill, gift, or talent. That my transformation, my recognition and acknowledgement that I'm a part of the whole. There was a time when I didn't see that. But that you're listening, attentive, a part of this, makes me feel special, makes me feel proud, fills me up. Jane Middleton Maas, maybe some of you know her. She's really smart. She's like some kind of therapist, and she's so good at what she does, she actually knows Oprah Winfrey, right? So, like, that's cool, right? And so Jane Middleton Maas helped me to understand something, that trauma is when something bad happens, but because of the circumstances you're in, you're not allowed to feel your feelings. Suddenly it all made sense. I've been in denial about even having PTSD, about my childhood. But I remembered the beautiful eyes of the caseworker in a in a Volkswagen Bug. You know, that's kind of oval in the 60s, the Volkswagen Bug. And I remember the engine was in the back. So my brother and I, before seatbelt laws and everything, we're crawling around in the back waiting for that, trying to find the engine. What's it doing back there? That's usually where the trunk is on the res. All the cars, the engines were out front, right? So it was really confusing to us. And she said, her beautiful, kind eyes. I don't remember what she looked like, but I remember the eyes in the mirror. She said, "You two are going to a really good home." And I was like, what kind of home did we drop my little brother off at? And she said, so make sure you let them know how happy you are to be there, because I don't want to place you in another home. You see, I realized in that moment that my real feelings don't matter anymore. I had to act happy. I already missed my other little brother. I already missed my mom. I missed my dad. I missed all my cousins that were playing Red Rover with me when this happened. I saw the tears in their eyes. They were going to miss me, but my job was to act happy no matter what. That stayed with me through the abuse, physical and otherwise. I was to act happy. I remember I would elaborate and exaggerate on the playground, and kids would call me a cheater, right? Because I had to live up to these ridiculous expectations I had about myself, so I'd make up rules that were out of the game, but all this. So, and I remember them saying to Kathy Dorr, my fourth grade teacher, my hero, they said to her, "He's a big liar." And she said, "No, he's a storyteller with a vivid imagination." She helped me to realize that I was a part of the whole. So I started telling stories with pride. It's just a story. I'm a storyteller. She saw how much I wanted to play the violin. She knew how important it was to me, and my parents saying no. I remember we had this rule that she would put on the chalkboard. Most of the rules we as classmates would come up with ourselves. But the number one rule that she had was you must go to the lavatory during recess. And that one was chalked off, a special rule. And I remember Kurt Koplowitz, Michael Kincaid, and I were playing tag on the jungle gym. And the bell rang, and I was like, oh no, I'm in trouble. I'm supposed to go to the lavatory during recess, and I gotta go. What do I do? So I was the last one to crawl. I said, Mrs. Dorr, I didn't call her Kathy Dorr then, I call her that now. We're still in touch with each other. I said, Mrs. Dorr, I know I'm supposed to go to the lavatory during recess, but we were on the jungle gym, and I just couldn't leave because it was the lava pit game, and if I touched the ground, I'd spontaneously combust. And she goes, I understand. You can go to the lavatory. And I said, really? Yes. And she goes, how can I say no to those beautiful brown eyes? I was like, oh. So I went to the lavatory. And I remember I took care of my business, and I was washing my hands with the pink powder soap. Right, drying my hands up, and I'm looking in the mirror, and for the first time in my life, I saw my eyes as brown and beautiful. Came back into the classroom. I was so happy to be there, and I realized that I was going to do whatever she asked me to do. She asked me to draw a picture of myself along with all the other classmates, and so I'm drawing a picture of myself. Now, I couldn't draw hands very well, but I wanted it to be the best picture in the world, so I drew a picture of me with my hands behind my back and my foot out for perspective, and a big smile on my face for Kathy Dorr, my fourth grade teacher, my hero. And then I felt her hand on my shoulder, and I was so in love with her. So it's like, yes. And then she said, you know, you have beautiful brown skin. Would you consider a darker shade? Yes. Pull out the brown crayon. I was lucky. I came from privilege, so I had the sharpener. I sharpened up the brown, right? The 64 Crayola crayons, right? So it had the sharpener built into it. I sharpened it up, and I waxed my brown skin in. Kept the smile. It was still bright white, and I was just brown skin, and then I felt so good. Years later, I was at the Pike Place Market where I was a street performer, and I was kind of grumpy that day. Pretty grumpy, very grumpy. Down on the world, and I saw this vendor selling t-shirts that said, "Love sees no color." And I walked by that, I just didn't resonate with me. And then I finally stopped by and I said, "I want you to understand something. These shirts are a lie." And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "My 4th grade teacher, Kathy Dorr, my hero, she saw my color and she loved my color." And they were like, "Oh, wow." And they said, "We won't sell these anymore. Help us take these to the dumpster. We'll make different shirts. We'll come up with a new design." And I did. Took them to the dumpster. Big boxes of t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, all went into the dumpster. And they came up with a different design. I don't know what that design was. I probably put them out of business. Sorry. Why am I telling you this story? There was one time, another grumpy day at the Pike Place Market. I was $300 short on rent. The manager of my apartment complex, he stopped me and he said, "If you don't pay rent on time this month, this will be your last month here." And I was like, "Oh, great." Not even on my best day did I make $300 as a street performer. There's no way I'm going to be able to do that. But I went anyway. I went down to the Pike Place Market, and there's these rules, like you got to buy a permit. I had the permit. I bought the annual permit, and then you got to stand next to a red note painted on the sidewalk. And if anybody, while you're playing, if anybody puts their instrument on that note at the top of the next hour, you've got to stop so they can take it. They can take the spot for an hour. If you put your instrument there, you're the next in line. But since it was a rainy Sunday, that's 2 strikes against me, there wasn't anybody down there. So from 10 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock at night, I played my violin. So hold your arm up for that length of time, wiggle your fingers. It's pretty painful. Near the end of the day, I had blisters underneath the calluses of my fingertips. Hurt. Felt like toothpicks poking up my fingernails. And I stop and shake my hand a little bit, and that would hurt even more. So it actually hurt less to just keep on playing, and so I did. Near the end of the day, this man starts walking toward me, and he's reaching in his pocket. And in street performer sign language, that's a good thing, right? So he's pulling out this, not a dollar bill though, a Christian tract. You know what those are? Little flimsy pieces of paper that give you the 4 steps to salvation on it, right? And he's about to put that in my empty violin case when I told him in, shall we say, non-Christian terms. I said, "I don't need no Christian tract. What I need is $300 for rent. You got that in your pocket?" And he said, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you." And I said, "Well, you did. Those Christian tracts are all stacked up on my windowsill at home. I'm going to see which denomination's going to win at the end of the year." And he was like, I'm really sorry, I know. I'll tip you if you play for me Amazing Grace." I said, "All right. I'll play it so bad and out of tune, you won't even be able to tell that it is Amazing Grace because you're a Christian. You got to be a man of your word." I knew just enough of the Bible to get me in trouble. And then he said, no, I got to be able to tell that it is Amazing Grace. And I said, "All right, I'll play it so bad and out of tune, you'll just barely tell that it is Amazing Grace, and then you got to tip me because you're a Christian. You got to be a man of your word." And then he said, "Fair enough." I was like, "What? Okay." So I started playing Amazing, you know how bad I can play, right? I started playing Amazing Grace in the wrong key, the wrong pitch, and definitely the wrong attitude. But if you listened really closely, you could just barely tell that it was Amazing Grace. Then an interesting thing happened. Around the 3rd verse, my fingers started to play the right notes. I was like, "Hey, fingers, play the wrong notes." But my fingers just kept playing the right notes. Then it occurred to me. If I play it right for him a couple verses, maybe he'll give me a bigger tip and I could pick up a Big Mac on the way home. Started hearing the words to the song, not with my ears, but inside my mind. I could hear the words to the song like a choir in my mind. And I realized that I was trying to make him feel the way I felt. I was trying to make him feel my anger for me. I was trying to get him to feel my feelings for me. I was literally being abusive to that man. And I didn't want to be abusive. And I noticed that I had a leak on my cheek while I'm playing the song. Now, I'm a Native man. I don't know about your culture so much, but in my culture, when an Indian Native man cries, we make a really ugly face to get lots of attention. Like we'll cry at the drop of a hat. My hat, who's gonna fix my hat? It wasn't anything like that. It was just a leak on my cheek. I finished the song. I opened my eyes, and there was actually a crowd of people standing, right there at the Pike Place Market. They hadn't been there all day. It was a rainy Sunday, and they were all there. My Christian friend reached in his pocket, and he pulls out $1 bill this time, and he says to everyone standing there, my friend here needs $300 for rent. And he put that $1 bill in my empty violin case. I said, no, don't. You don't understand. I want to apologize. And he goes, no. And he just turned away and walked away. And everybody that witnessed it just started walking toward me and asking me questions that street performers dream of. Like, excuse me, sir, do you accept checks? Yeah. Excuse me, where's the nearest ATM machine? Up the stairs to the left. My mind was blown. Not only did I have enough money for rent that month, I was able to produce my first demo CD, A Little Boat in the Big River. Why am I telling you this story? Because I believe that trying to pray is praying. Sometimes going through the motions is enough. And this is my version of Amazing Grace. Thank you very much. Natsiem, Natschalakasiem, Haishka, and Exalasiem. Thank you for doing the work you do. Do your best. Pray it's blessed, and let the great spirit of love take care of the rest. Haishka.